Hey everyone, today we're going to break down a really heated TV panel debate that all started with what seemed like a super simple question about voting. But as you'll see, that one question just blew the lid off a much deeper conflict in how we think about elections. What's more important, security or access?
All right, so picture this. You've got a news panel, everyone's talking about election integrity, and right in the middle of all the back and forth, investor and TV personality Kevin O'Leary just cuts through the noise and asks a very, very direct question.
And there it is. That's the question that kicks this whole thing off. I mean, it seems straightforward, right? A basic question of law. O'Leary wants a simple yes or no. But, well, what he gets is something else entirely.
You can really hear his frustration here. His whole point is that in most other developed countries, like Canada or France or Australia, this isn't even a conversation. He's arguing that proving you're a citizen to vote is a totally standard solved issue everywhere else.
But the response he gets from the panel is so telling, because instead of a direct, yes, of course it's illegal, the conversation immediately pivots. The focus shifts away from the legality of it to the scale of it. And this is a classic debate tactic, right? The panelists don't actually challenge the law. Instead, they completely reframe the issue. The new question becomes, okay, but how often does this really truly happen? And here's the number they use to make their point. One of the panelists jumps in, arguing that voting by non-citizens is so ridiculously rare, citing this figure, 0.0001%, that it's not even a real threat to our elections. So this perfectly captures that first major clash in the debate. On one side, you've got this argument from principle. Hey, if something's illegal, it's illegal. It doesn't matter if it happens once or a million times. But on the other side, you've got the argument from data. Why are we going to create huge policies to solve a problem that is, statistically speaking, barely even there?
So, this clash over principle versus numbers, it leads directly into the next big pivot in the conversation. Because once legality and frequency are both on the table, the whole thing shifts again. This time, it's about the voter ID laws themselves.
All of a sudden, we're not even talking about illegal voting anymore. The focus is now on the proposed solution. And the counterargument is that these laws, which are supposed to make elections more secure, might actually just end up stopping legitimate citizens from being able to vote at all.
And this is really the emotional heart of the whole access argument. A panelist actually compares the cost of getting a passport, which is one form of ID, to a poll tax. And that's a really powerful, historically loaded term, It refers to fees that were used to stop poor people from voting. And they back this up with some pretty specific examples. It's not just about the money for the documents themselves. They're talking about all the other hurdles. Things like, how do you get to the government office if you don't have a car? Or taking unpaid time off work to stand in line? Or what about navigating all the bureaucratic headaches if your name changed after getting married?
But is that the only way to see these challenges? The source material we're pulling from here actually introduces a counter perspective that frames these exact same issues in a completely different light.
And here you can see the two views, side by side. Are these hurdles barriers, like huge insurmountable walls that literally stop people from voting? Or are they inconveniences? The kind of annoying logistical tasks that are just a normal part of being an adult, like applying for a job or registering your car.
This quote from the commentator really captures that counter-argument perfectly. It's basically questioning the whole premise that citizens who can handle all these other complex parts of life are somehow incapable of figuring out how to get an ID.
So, in the middle of all this arguing, someone actually offers up a potential solution. A panelist suggests, what if we just made voter ID part of the education system? Imagine if every student who passed a civics class in high school just automatically got a voter ID card along with their diploma. Problem solved, right?
So, okay, after all of these pivots and arguments and counter-arguments, what are we really left with? Well, this whole discussion basically exposes a really fundamental tension at the heart of how we think about our elections.
This was never just about a simple yes or no question. It was really a proxy war between two different and sometimes conflicting democratic values. It's all about what a voting system should prioritize above everything else.
And here they are, plain and simple. On one side, you have the priority of security. This is the belief that the integrity of the vote is sacred and you have to protect it from any hint of fraud, no matter how rare it is. And on the other side, you have the priority of access, the belief that the system should have as few obstacles as possible to make sure every single eligible citizen has the chance to vote.
And so this entire messy, complicated debate really just boils down to one incredibly difficult question. It's the central dilemma.
When these two core values, security and access, seem to be in conflict, how does a society decide which one gets more weight? That's a question worth thinking about long after the news panel signs off.